Thank you for this opportunity. And of course, again, what I'm presenting is the result of a joint work. And I want to give credits to my colleagues from the Russian Constructicon team, especially to Anna Andresen, Daria Mardashova, Laura Yanda, and Ekaterina Rakhilina. So I will try to explain what Russian has to offer. Speaking of constructional alignment or Constructicon alignments. And most importantly, I would like to introduce an overall semantic classification of constructions that we kind of developed, but also some extra features. But first, let me start with the question why we even needed this semantic classification. Well, the need for having an elaborate semantic classification is motivated by theoretical and practical needs. So in particular, we were wondering what are the major types of meanings that grammatical constructions can encode and how they form a coherent system, how that system can be modeled, and importantly, how to turn a list of collected items into a structured inventory that we believe a language is. So that was our practical need. And in a way, we supposed that if we collect a large enough inventory, we can try to classify it. Well, other Constructicons use frame semantics a lot. We don't. Better for worse. Well, the thing is, most importantly, Russian lacks a fully developed FrameNet resource. And well, to start working on that, it would also take a lot of time and effort. And also we have a large variety of like syntactical patterns that we have. And for instance, predicate argument constructions comprise only 8% of all constructions in our database. So we were thinking how to analyze semantics of the entire inventory of constructions. And we came up with a multi-layered semantic classification. We adopted a bottom-up approach because, well, our aim was to analyze constructions on their own terms, to allow patterns emerge from the data rather than imposing other models. And so this is an emergent classification. What we did is we annotated individual constructions by assigning them semantic tags that capture relevant aspects of meanings. We also annotated all constructions syntactically, but I won't be speaking of the syntactic annotation today. Well, we were doing that as a panel of 3 native speakers, and we always had to come to an agreement about the annotation. And we worked over a long period of time, and this system evolved through that time. Well, of course, this is an emergent classification, but at the same time, our bottom-up approach does not mean that the work was carried out in a theoretical vacuum. And our results are verified against typological studies of grammatical categories across languages. So when we annotated constructions, we took into account corresponding categories, distinctions, and terminology already known from typological studies, and we adopted and adjusted that terminology for annotation of our constructions of our semantic types. Well, our practice of consulting typological studies to inform our semantic annotation is motivated by the idea of the universal grammatical inventory. And in fact, many of our constructions comport with typologically attested grammatical categories. At the same time, we found out that our system goes beyond typologically attested categories. So we have some other semantic types like non-existence or attitude that we called non-existence, attitude, salient property, or reaction to the previous discourse. So, for instance, if we take construction Ivan возьми и купи новую машину, Ivan suddenly bought a new car. Well, what this construction means is, or first, we defined it as unexpected outcome construction. But what it actually means is that something happens surprisingly for the speaker. And there is a grammatical category called mirativity. So we adopted mirative as one of our semantic types for constructions like this. Yes. As I've already told, in essence, the semantic classification co-evolved with the collection of constructions. So we actually started annotating when we had roughly 600 constructions, because we decided, well, it's too much to deal with. Then we tried to classify them. We also added extra 400 constructions that we called from Russian National Corpus, like the collocations, and also we've tried to do full text annotation on some examples. So basically what we've been doing is we went back and forth several times to adjust the semantic types that we tried to establish. And then we once we reached about 1,000 constructions, our classification became rather stable. That means that we added new constructions and we could tag them with already existent tags rather than we experienced the need to add new and new semantic types. Of course, the more we explore on individual constructions, the more we still adjust the classification that we have. So it's work in progress, but and we don't claim that this inventory is exhaustive, but we think we identified major semantic types and their relationships. So what semantic types of constructions are best represented in our data? I don't know if you can see that, unfortunately the screen is small, but this is a distribution of constructions across 27 most populated semantic types that have more than 50 constructions. And like the most populated ones are polarity value type, degree of intensity, assessment, attitude, and then followed by comparison, salient property, reaction to the previous discourse, and other. And we have this information on the statistics page of our website, so it reflects the current distribution. Okay, so this table lists all semantic types that we have, 55 semantic types of constructions. They are grouped into subclasses and classes, but also they have subtypes, 182 subtypes in total. They're not here, of course, but you can spot their presence if you see the plus sign next to semantic type. So for example, this comparison has 5 subtypes: comparison of equality, inequality, similarity, imitation, and contrast, while instrument has no subtypes. And yeah, we explained our terminology and provide illustrations of types and subtypes in the article that is about to be out. But also all information is available on the website in the instructions section. And well, now I will quickly go class by class. Those are the big superordinate groupings of semantic types. So the largest class is called qualia, and we borrowed this term from philosophy, where it refers to individual instances of or forms of conscious experience. And we use this term to call a large class of constructions that describe the properties of objective physical world that is external to the speaker. So qualia has 7 subclasses: situation structures, situation modifiers, major roles, logical relations, and so on. Another semantic class is called modality and its neighborhood, and it includes both root and epistemic modality, as well as other various means to impose or remove barriers to an action. And I'll come back at this class a bit later on. So next class is called subjectivity, and is follows from the title. Constructions of this class encode the subjective evaluation of the situation by the speaker. So this is it. A distinct class of constructions that function at the discourse level is called discourse. Well, these constructions are used to structure the text or organize the communication, and also often they are larger than one sentence. Finally, there is a class called parameters, and it consists of semantic types that encode degree of intensity and accuracy. So these semantic types imply a scale that serves as a point of reference for a property or a situation. And what's important about this type, this class and 2 types that it comprises of, is that it usually overlaps with other classes, and so that it can build over other meanings. All classes that we have are closely connected, interrelated, because, well, constructions can simultaneously belong to several classes. And, well, as I said, parameters have a slightly distinct position, and that is visualized in the picture. In fact, 78% of constructions that we have in that class overlap with other semantic classes, which is a large number. So crucially, the semantic classification that we have is not merely an inventory of types, but an intensely interwoven network of overlapping groups. Yes, and also an important note that when we classified constructions, we didn't try to put them into boxes, so they're not very distinct. Rather, it works as a system of text. So one construction can have 1, 2, 3, or 4, actually potentially unlimited number of tags, but usually no more than 4. And this system is also useful for modeling lateral relationships between constructions and uniting constructions into families. So usually these tags, they represent semantic type, and they also have semantic subtypes. So, for instance, construction «Он уже давно взял у меня эту книгу и привет уехал в отпуск» bears 2 semantic types. Okay, so it means he borrowed my book a long time ago and suddenly disappeared. He left for a vacation. And what it captures is that a person suddenly disappeared. So we put it, we use a tag non-existence with subtype disappear. And well, it was surprising and sudden for the speaker. So it also it is also tagged as mirative. So a lot of interaction between semantic types happens on the level of individual constructions. If I wrap up, our classification is structured as follows: the hierarchy of semantic units, starting from the lower level, is like we have constructions that unite in families, families unite in clusters, clusters unite in networks, then in subclasses, and finally in classes. And our semantic types represent usually networks, and semantic subtypes represent clusters of constructions. Now, let's have a quick closer look at the class modality and its neighborhood. This class comprises 301 constructions, and the structure of the class is somewhat reflecting a radial category. So we have a central core model meanings, which are root modality and epistemic modality, and we have a semantic neighborhood. The neighborhood includes such types as volition, causation, prohibition, threat, curse, request, yes, and so on. And so boxes represent types, and arrows represent subtypes. For example, the semantic type root modality has 4 subtypes. And well, numbers indicate how many constructions each type consists of. Then we have identified relations between semantic types based on, well, whether constructions can belong to 2 semantic types at the same time. And dashed lines show the overlaps with constructions in other semantic classes. So, for example, volition is the semantic types that has connections to most of other classes, most of other types within this class. And let's say subtype possibility has an overlap with actuality that also belongs to semantic class qualia. And the radial category structure can be used to model a network of constructions. So it's a lower level than this one. And if we zoom into prohibitive semantic type, we can see how this network of prohibitive constructions is organized. Again, I will not go into detail, but it comprises of 2 clusters. Cluster number 1 is prohibition towards a future action. Cluster number 2 is prohibition towards an ongoing action. And you see that there is core meanings and there is peripheral families. So boxes here, they represent semantic families of constructions. And one idea from this is that having smaller families can serve as a basis for a comparison between languages, because it's probably easier to compare constructions on a lower level than on an upper level. Oh yeah, so these are the families. Finally, I have like 1 more minute and a bit. We glossed every construction because, I mean, Russian, first of all, it's written in Cyrillics, that is unfortunate. for people who cannot really read Cyrillics, but we glossed every construction according to Leipzig glossing rules. It is not yet on the website because we're now thinking of how to represent it better, but you can see basically what anchor words are, what are the anchor words, and also we show the constructionalization paths. So, for instance, if an intensifier that is used is derived from the word originally meaning painfully, like painfully complicated, literally, or that я бросил курить, I quit smoking. So quit literally is to throw something. We show that with this sign. Well, again, literal translation of constructions is impossible in most cases, and primarily for pedagogical purposes, we collected equivalents in other languages, roughly English and Norwegian. So maybe this also can be used as their point of comparison. So, well, although the classification is language specific, we propose a system of semantic tags that subdivides our items into meaningful classes and also smaller groups, and possibly facilitates the identification of constructional families. And so we turned the list of constructions into a structured network. What we think is important is that it is a bottom-up approach, but it can also be served as a basis for cross-linguistic comparison. And especially for Slavic languages, probably, but also beyond. And now there is Ukrainian Constructicon in progress. So we'll see how that goes. And well, we also have English glossing and equivalents that might be useful. Thank you.